we are on the site of the castle.
And it was the first time the Beatles had really stopped being semi-professional almost.
Look at that.
Absolutely fascinating.
That's what you do. You buy these clothes that cost them and make a difference in it. But we never do that.
Never complains, gets up, gets on with a smile on his face.
You just want you to sit in your chair and go, hip hip hooray, for the Western press and the Western narrative. You dare to take the same old, every single day without this. If you haven't seen it before, please watch the first series, the first 2 episodes, the second series. Stallone. Good evening, everybody. It's me again. Yeah, it's a really Christmas tree. It's great, isn't it? Look at the fire there, look. Smash it better than Anthony's. My fire there. It's not half warm as well. It's just warm. I think I'll just take this off, you know, because I'm that warm, you know, with the snow and everything outside. And the lovely Christmas tree here. Absolutely brilliant. So I might just, you know, be bare-chested, you know. So fancy that, right? Fancy seeing me in bare-chested. Be great, wouldn't it? Eh? For all you lovely ladies. Anyway, I just want to thank Gap Painting Services for sponsoring the Frank Carlyle Show. These people look, you know, a couple of week after next is Christmas, believe it or not. We're coming up to Christmas week next week, and if you need something, get these in. They'll do it for Christmas. They will do it first class, fully time served, and it's just brilliant, honestly. So, Gap Painting Services, as I said, the fully time served, the fully insured, and the great people. They're really smashing people. And I think that they'll bring with them, you know, nice cups of tea for you, honestly, and turkey sandwiches with cranberry sauce on, fantastic. And a few Brussels sprouts sandwiches. And that's what Gap Painting Services are all about. Absolutely wonderful lads. So I thank them for sponsoring the Frank Carlyle Show. I've got a great guest on tonight. He's one of these lads who, how can I put it? He's written books which will be shown in a moment, which is true to the art, actually. You know, me being a historian, it's great. I just said, you know, about this fella, and I went, whoa, have him on, definitely have him on. And it's John Maxwell, actually, the author, so we'll be talking to him in a moment or two. But, you know, and obviously I've got the great artist, Anthony Brown. I think he should be Sir Anthony Brown, to be honest. And Lady Laney, how does that sound? Lady Laney, this lovely one. She hit me over the head with a chicken sandwich or something. Anyway. No, this is a great thing, and I'm telling you something now, people. This is actually pre-recorded yesterday morning, the show. But don't be worrying, all your comments will be read out, because I've got this fantastic vision. And I was saying to myself, I'm going to read out these. Now, this is yesterday, don't forget. As I said, this is pre-recorded, because we're all busy, you see. gearing up for Christmas. So let me try and read out what I think that you have said tonight, but I'm reading it out like yesterday morning. The Red Bird. Sorry, Frank and guests, can't make the live, but we'll catch the replay. I won't say have a good show because you never let us down, so I know it's going to be a banger. I know. I hope I've got that right. Because this vision thing I've got. I'm like George Orwell. The Vision, Jules Verne, The Vision, H.G. Wells. I've got all this vision. You see everything in the future. Don't forget to give our Frank a like. You know he deserves it. And if not already, please subscribe. You won't be disappointed. Thank you so much, Redbird. You're a good man. Love you. Edward Frank Sinatra. You wouldn't believe it, but I was dreaming about it. Frank Sinatra. Mad, isn't it? I think I was watching something and it was about him. And so, yeah, it was him and Tony Curtis. And that's all I was dreaming about. Mr. Sinatra. Edward, where's the music from your intro? Plays it to me. That was played. And the bunker says, I like the intro song. The Ottomans say, lock up the wives, boys. What's it to that? Bit misogyny, isn't it, really? Frank will be taking everyone's missus. Oh, come on. Can't even take the L one next door. Never mind. Hi guys, my work laptop isn't left. Oh no. To join the show, sorry, says Dennis Papa. Oh, that's a shame, Dennis, mate. I'm going to set up between me, you, and John and Anthony a show, but it'll be in the new year. And I want to talk about America and what's going on in America today, how they view history. I'm not being funny, but do they know about history? In all honesty. And like with this Biden administration going in and the new Trump administration coming in, how do they feel about this? So I want to be talking about that. So I'm going to set up a show. It won't be like this history show thing. It'll be, like when I've got a free night, that's what it'll be. And it should be good. It should be good. Because these are people who know about America. Evening, Frank and guests, says our little Lynn. Hiya, Lynn. Thanks for joining us. Hi, everyone. And Frank, says the lovely Myra Page, all the way from South Africa. It's funny, I was looking at something today, and it was questioning a few things that I've questioned, by the way. Septimus Severus, don't forget, I used to lecture about the Roman Empire. And it was about him, and I was made up with this fella. Made up with him because that's for another time. That's for another time. Woke fella. Historian, supposedly. Excuse me. This is bloody starting on me again. Sorry. Paul Turner. Evening, Frank. Hope you're okay. Yes, thank you. Sorry, Frank, just joking. Edward, I know you are, mate. Honestly, I know. I can try my Yeah, I can. Yeah, via mobile. Yeah, do that. Do that. Hello, Myra, says Edward. Hello, Paul, says Edward. Gary, evening. Evening, Frank and guests. Hey, Gary. And they're all saying hello to one another, like Paul to Edward and the lovely Myra to Edward too. Anyway, I'm going to bring in Anthony first. I'm going to bring in my special guest for tonight. And hopefully a little bit later on, Dennis Pepperack, all the way from Tampa. Tampa. Think about it. Tampa. And it'll be fully international then, because we'll have our Romanian friend on as well from Romania. He'll be coming on later on, I suppose. And even Pavel from the Czech Republic, you know. He phoned me yesterday, and I couldn't see him, unfortunately. I couldn't see him, and I wanted to see him, cracking lad. But anyway, I'm going to bring in my great friend here, Anthony Brown, great artist. Hey, Anthony.
Oh, good evening, Frank. You wanna check the draft on that window, you know, mate. I'm the same. That's what's giving us all the sniffles.
Do you know what? It's like I've got this condition that breaks out on me all the time, and it's horrible, and it gets me around, you know, my nostrils, you know, itches me. That's why I do that all the time. It's a terrible itch. It really is. And if I put this cream on that I've got, you know, off the doctors, it burns. It really burns me, you know, and also tickles me at the same time, you know, itchy. And it's a terrible concoction of burning and itching, you know. Paul Taylor. Hello, Anthony.
Good evening, Paul. Good evening, all. Sorry for my lazy.
Myra says, hi, Anthony.
Hi, I'm Myra. Nice to be on with you all.
And Zara says, Frank's got fleas.
Oh.
Thank you, Zara. That's all that I need. Anyway, yeah, Frank the Flea Man. And Myra says, Frank, drink brandy. It helps.
Well, it helps me. I don't know if it helps Frank.
That's what I mean. Drink brandy. Are you on over Christmas and the New Year? I don't know yet. I've got to speak to Jason. Really, I've got to speak to him, Edward. So we'll let you know anyway. Honestly, let you know. And I'm going to bring on this fine chap, John Maxwell, the author. And there he is. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Frank. How are you diddling? Hi, Anthony. How are you diddling?
Good evening, John. Pleasure to meet.
Likewise. It's great to be on the. I would say podcast, but it's more like a show. I'd say, you know, all the bells and whistles. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's see, as I said, I've got this vision. As you know, it's been recorded. You know, today. You know, which is Sunday morning. So it's being pre-recorded, and I'm just guessing. You know, with this vision, I've got all these questions and comments and things like that. So it's going out supposedly live, they think. That's it, though. But anyway, you know I'm nuts, don't you? Anyway, Paul Sarah says, good evening, John.
Good evening, Squire. Is that yeah, it's Keegan, isn't it? Wow, I've got hair like that now. I'm not going to untie it, but I've actually got hair like that now.
Really?
Yeah. Mighty Mouse. There he is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's Dennis joining us. Shall I bring
here
him on
comes
or leave
trouble.
him?
3,000 miles away.
Well,
Dennis
this
the
is it,
Menace.
you know. And he's got a pet alligator as well. It's unbelievable what this
Yes.
one's got.
Yeah.
And he strokes us every night. You know, like the way people stroke cats. He's got a big alligator on his knee, you know, stroking it, watching the telly.
He's missing a few fingers, mine, like.
But anyway, here's my old mate here, Dennis. Hey, Dennis.
Now then.
Hey guys,
Hey,
might be a little bit. Hopefully, I'm not on a bit of a delay because I'm trying to do this through my mobile. Sorry for the trouble.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
How you doing, John? Good to see you.
Good to see you, mate. Hey, good to see you sitting there in the t-shirt while we're shivering and then in the northern wastes up here.
Well, I won't show you the shorts and flip flops then.
No, that's just it's a family show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I want to show first, boys, you know, before you start getting into your book and everything else, John, I want to show Liverpool, and this is around 1865. That's how Liverpool looked. And it's very significant, as you know, 1865 with the connection between Liverpool and America and what you've written about. So you see where I'm coming from on this?
Absolutely. That's a brilliant map. It looks a little bit like the Ackerman map of 1847, but not quite the same. But it probably there was a bit of a trend at the time. They like to go up in balloons and do these sort of illustrations. I've got a map. I've got the big map of it. I can't show you. There's obviously it was a French fella, and it's inside this. That would make sense with the balloon thing. The French were pioneers of the balloons, aren't they? That's fantastic. Yeah. I spent a considerable amount of time staring at maps really for this because my whole sort of modus operandi of writing both books, Water Street and the sequel, The Americans Abercrombie Square, was to really be able to take the reader to the place, you know. So what it looked like, what it smelled like, and from by all accounts, it didn't smell very nice.
No.
It was, you know, you had cholera was still around. You had all kinds of kind of sanitary
cholera,
issues with the city.
Dysentery, everything was going.
Absolutely.
And lots of kiddies, you know, the infant mortality rate was horrendous simply because lots of children were dying, not from cholera or dysentery, but they were dying from scarlet fever.
Yeah.
You know, so this is what you had in the Liverpool Times, but we've been like that right through history. You know, I go back to 1348 to 1358 in a 10-year span, and it nearly wiped out. And I'm talking about the Black Death, believe it or not. It nearly wiped out the entire population of Liverpool at the time in that 10-year span. Yeah. So, you know, it's never been a healthy city, especially in the 19th century. Well, and you had the likes of Kitty Wilkinson and the wonderful Agnes Jones, you know, who helped. And Dr. Duncan, by the way.
Of course. Pioneers. To a person, Kitty Wilkinson was incredible. A friend of mine, John Maguire, is writing a book about Kitty Wilkinson. Maybe you can come on at some point, but absolutely incredible. And I think for me, the middle years of the 19th century are the pivotal to Liverpool, but also therefore the pivotal to the world, because you've got this period where 1840s, you had the Great Irish Hunger, so a huge influx, hundreds of thousands of Irish coming through, 1.3 million coming through the docks in Liverpool, some of them going on to the New World, the United States, Canada, other places. Others stayed here, and that's one of the reasons why you had these big diseases sort of took hold. It's an interesting place to start, Frank. Because you had this...
the thing is, what you mentioned about the Irish, after the 1845 famine, or potato famine, as they call it, because as George Maynard Shaw said, how could there be a famine when the country was full of food? So this is what you have about. And when they came here, there was louse-borne disease.
Yeah.
And thousands were dying. I don't live far from where, it's only over the road where they were digging up foundations to build this particular place. And they found 2,000 bodies, Irish bodies, 2,000. So this is what Liverpool was all about. I'm sorry to go on. Go on.
No, I mean it's not a diversion at all, because the Irish are kind of inseparable from that era of the American Civil War as well. Both in terms of the amount of Irish who went over to fight on both sides initially, but mainly for the Union Army, but also in terms of the influence in Liverpool. It was absolutely crucial, which is why there are quite a few Irish voices in both my books. There are Irish characters in there, because I wanted to link them in. I wanted to kind of give a sort of working class perspective. We have to remember that most of the history books from this period and later were written by literate people, and if you were literate at this time, you had to generally be quite well off. It was seen as a luxury more than anything else. If you're working class, or dying of starvation coming off a boat, you weren't really likely to be literate. So I wanted to kind of put the voices back in these mouths, really. And my ancestors, I'm sure you guys might have some link, because it's difficult to live in Liverpool and not have that link. So that was one of the purposes behind writing the two books, was to kind of bring that kind of that perspective into it, also covering these kind of key historical events.
That's brilliant, because this is how Liverpool grew with the likes of migrants. Well, as you mentioned about the Irish came over, and some settled. The majority actually went over to America. And you had the likes of the Italians coming over, that's my side of the family. So when the Italians came over, they were all these terrazzo floor layers. That's how they got to know about Liverpool. And two of my great great uncles, they came over, and they were laying the floor, the terrazzo floor, the mosaic floor, in the Port of Liverpool building. And they said, Liverpool's great. Smashing over there. And them Scousers are brilliant. You want to see them? Oh, brilliant. I'm just joking about that. But, and then, that's how, they went back. And then my family came over again.
I got to give John props, too. He snuck in some pretty familiar surnames in the Water Street book.
They came to me in a dream, Dennis. So there's nothing to do with that's nothing to do with me, mate.
Yeah, Messrs. Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Starkey definitely got my attention.
Yeah, it's sort of they sort of made their way. Well, the McCartney one's an interesting one, because there's a key character called Pat the Cat in it, in both books, and he's a cat burglar. Effectively, he's someone who can kind of climb ridiculous buildings and steal things. That's how he operates. But his second name's actually, McCarthy in kind of more a Gaelic sort of pronunciation. But what happened, and this happened an awful lot, is obviously illiterate, couldn't spell his own name, came through through the docks, through the landing stage, and someone's in a ledger saying, "What's your name?" "Oh, McCartney, that'll do." So McCartney, all these names are basically the same names, but just spelled differently, and that's the kind of origin of Paul McCartney's etymology. So I've just snuck him in there, and I threw Lennon in, but Lennon dies quite early, so sorry about that. And and Starkey's like the sort of arch corrupt copper in it as well. So yeah.
So hang on, John. Hang on. So your book is a fiction book. with like, with real life history. And do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. Both books are fictions, but they weave real life
What
people
was happening at the time?
and real life events as well, and they're very closely tied with real life events. It was my way really of getting. I mean, my background is writing fiction and making films, so and drama and so forth. So I'm really interested in how you can sort of immerse someone. I mean, everyone talks about games and interactive technology now. The most interactive form, and I say this to anyone ahead of Christmas, get a good book, read it. Get this book. It's a cracker. This one here. But also get anyone's book. Get a book that you really, really enjoy, because it is the most immersive thing. You feel a good book will make you feel like you're in there. You're actually part of it, and you kind of. This is why 1863 and 1865 respectively, because that's when the two books are set. I really wanted to take the reader into that time and place, and I've used quite a few real events. I love talking with historians. That I always learn something when I have a conversation with an historian.
Well, have you heard anything about this whole Horsfall monster wrought iron gun?
Now, I'm throwing this in there, Frank. Is that the gun that was forged on Duke Street? Fired the first salvo.
2nd Street, yeah, that's why I put this
2nd Street, yeah.
Can I just go on? It was the first. It was the first action of the Civil War. That was the gun that was fired. It started the Civil War. And there it is. It's incredible. The Horsfall gun, made in 2nd Street. And there, I can't tell you where it is, but where all that smoke and everything else, that's 2nd Street. That's where it was made. So, you do have all these wonderful things. I brought Gloria Estefan around. I didn't even know it was there, to be honest. And I brought her around there on a band. They were appearing here, and they appeared, but the flight was delayed, so I don't know. And I was given a talk in the concert room at St. George's Hall, and I went up to give a sound check. So anyway, I walked along the balcony. There was no one in there, but there was this little group of Americans. I didn't know anywhere, so I walked over, and they were looking up at something. I said, "Can I help you there?" They said, "Yeah, what's this?" Anyway, he explained what it was, and I said, "Listen," I said, "I've got an hour or so," because they said they were from America. Now, why I didn't recognise Gloria Estefan, she had this big floppy hat on, a bandana that went right around her face, and big sunglasses. I didn't hear them. It's only a little thing. So anyway, I said, "I've got an hour. I'll take you around if you want. I've got to go into town. I'll show you the connection." And they said, "Will you?" And I said, "Yeah, the Liverpool and American connection." So anyway, when I went in, they gave me sound check. They thought I was a singer. They didn't know. A singer.
Well, Frank Sinatra, you know what I mean?
Come on, yeah. There you go. Yeah. Absolutely crazy. But I'd like to show you this as well.
Yes.
And that was the last thing. The line was drawn under the Civil War, as you know, about. But get on to this next one. I won't be long.
It is. Woodell. James Woodell.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
There he is.
James Iredell Woodell. Yeah, quite a guy. One of the main actors, really. He was a very, very adept sailor, really. And like quite a few of the, just to kind of put it in context for the listeners and watchers, and Frank, you'll certainly know this, that there was no Confederate Navy to speak of, not in a kind of challenging way at the start of the American Civil War. That gun we saw before, that was the first action of Fort Sumter, which really kicked the whole thing off. But it had been boiling up for a while. You had certain brigades that built the Confederate Army, and they quickly assembled a very, very powerful army. A strong cavalry, artillery, They were able to they were a match for the Union in many ways, and so many what they were seen as talented generals or talented senior officers had defected over to the south. Not just that, you had whole brigades really of battle-hardened soldiers who fought in Mexico and kind of pretty much took most of Spain's territory off them, including California, which eventually became the West Coast and those states. So you had this situation where a very sort of powerful force had come together, and they quickly wanted to kind of realize that this ambition of becoming a nation. Now, at the time, already existing, and it had been for quite established for a long time, was the cotton trade and the links with Liverpool. I'm saying cotton specifically. There were other products and were other territories.
Cotton was very important, as you know.
Cotton was king. Cotton, absolutely.
Coming in Syria. That's how we made our money, to be honest. Through the cotton.
Absolutely. So
can I just say something, John, please?
Sure.
It's fascinating what you're saying, and it's about Liverpool. You know, the North. Because of the cotton, the people of Liverpool supported the South.
I think that's an accurate statement. I think that's entirely accurate.
We'll get onto this, John. I've got a document somewhere. I've got a document somewhere here. The North, they seen, you was mentioning before, you know, the state of Liverpool, especially with disease and everything else, and poverty. Can't get away from the poverty. Yet the Northern Americans, they were sending over food parcels and clothing for the people of Liverpool, and they're supporting the South.
Well,
it's the island.
It's not. From my, I think that completely tallies though, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a gentleman who was actually I've fictionalized called Thomas Haynes Dudley, who was the during the American Civil War, he was the U.S. consul from the North, and everything I haven't read a bad thing about this guy, to be honest. It's quite difficult to look for someone in history and not find a bit of dirt on them, you know, one way or the other. But this guy, you know, he's sort of like, you know, he's kind of in Abraham Lincoln's image in some ways. He was a big supporter, huge abolitionist, supporter of Lincoln, and Lincoln was kind of, relatively speaking, towards the left as he saw it. Anyway, he was given this kind of task to come to Liverpool and sort of counter a lot of this Southern support, and he went for it. He commissioned spies, saboteurs. He challenged it in the court, but he was also, by all accounts, you know, quite philanthropic, which was difficult to do, like you say, Frank, in that time, given the support for the Confederacy. But a lot of that support was partly down to the love of money and cotton, but also it was a deep-rooted thing because you had the cotton drought, you had vast riches being made in the late 1850s, and it was growing, it was absolutely exploding, this trade. And then suddenly the ships blockaded the South, and you had this situation where kind of hand over fist, people in the city of Liverpool were supporting the Confederates because they were scared that the bubble was going to burst. And this was going from, you know, the kind of the rich cotton brokers, the ones that kind of traded in the open air court of out behind the town hall, so the Cotton Exchange, all the way through Liverpool kind of high society, and even down into the docks and the workers there who really genuinely feared that, you know, there was going to be an economic disaster because, like we said before, that was the king of all products, cotton. If that goes, then Liverpool, all these riches coming into the city, were under threat. So that was the mentality, and the subtleties of it, and the real mechanics of it. This cotton was getting developed by slave labor, basically, weren't even considered to that point. They were by individuals, but those voices were often drowned out by, you know, the kind of this bigger movements. You know, holding garden fetes, even get-togethers, fundraising get-togethers in St. George's Hall and places like that. It happened all over the city, and it happened over the course of most of the Civil War. So that's just one of the things I can talk about. But it really is an incredible history, and the more I find out about it, the more I find, it's quite insidious in some ways.
It shows, Judge, and I'm sorry now, my daughter's just texted me. I'm just answering it. See, the point is, John, with your writing, I love that. I'll tell you for why. I'm a specialist on. Can I just a comment?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
There's a cracking comment here. Well, yeah, two comments. One from Ottoman Turk. The Ottoman Turk. He says the Ottoman Empire defied the royal family by sending ships full of potatoes and supplies for the Irish during the famine. Absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mentioned that in not on here, but I mentioned it about the Turks, believe it or not, sending over potatoes to the Irish, because the Irish was taking out everything.
Yeah.
There was potatoes being exported into England, and this was during the potato famine, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it was shocking. It really was shocking what the English were doing, right? Yeah. But anyway, that's by the by, and that's so spot on, because as I said before, the Americans were sending through, the North Americans, that is, the northern states of the USA, they were sending over food parcels and everything else. Yet we were supporting the southern states because of the cotton. And another thing, John, Manchester, they would have suffered greatly from lack of cotton coming in.
Yeah, yeah. And yet, Manchester was, in many ways, there were some much louder voices in Manchester that spoke in favour of the North.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I hate to say, Manchester's got one up on Liverpool, because none of us like to admit that, do we? But
no, we don't.
In terms of how history views it, but you've also got to remember, Liverpool in itself was a very different place at the time. There were a huge number of people. It actually wasn't a city until the 1880s, I believe, but it was still, probably on a par of how many people there are today, and the population was skyrocketing. So. But that most of that population that was coming in didn't have the resources to be able to really have an opinion on these things as such. It was more the kind of denizens of the city who stood to lose out, and that's why there was this kind of staunch support for the Confederates.
Robert E. Lee had a very albeit tenuous connection to Liverpool, because his father was a cavalry officer during the Revolution who took on Bannister Tarleton, who ended up going on to be, an MP standing for Liverpool, and was very much in favor of keeping slavery.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And I took Bannister's name.
What's that?
As you'll know, you've read the book. You've read the first one, Dennis. I took Bannister's name and applied into my insidious Confederate commander, Bannister Dunwoody, who's kind of a combination between Rhett Butler and Hitler. But anyway, I'll get onto that.
Don't get onto that.
Well, and John, don't take this the wrong way, but I mean, from the torso up, he kind of reminded me of Kenneth Branagh's portrayal of that guy in the remake of The Wild Wild West, the movie with Will Smith. But I mean, that's the picture I have, the mustachio guy, the hat.
Well, I through all of this, and I am enthralled by the history, but I have to say with both books that there is a nod towards John Ford and westerns, and actually, that story of the kind of frontier town, which Liverpool was, in a sense, and that sharing that kind of characteristic with frontier towns. You know, there was a kind of lawless side as well. You know, there were Irish gangs and gangs from other backgrounds. You know, the White Rabbits had a presence here in Liverpool. They're known for gangs in New York, Scorsese's film. But
Brilliant, you mentioned that. Yeah.
The White Rabbits actually had a very strong presence here. You know, the Lemon Streeters and the High Rip Gang as well. So, again, I've used kind of gang culture, you know, to get where I want to go in both these books, and sort of, yeah, and it fits very well in the sort of idea of a Western too, you know, and I'm quite unapologetic about that, because I think, you know, if you want to get immersed in the story, then there has to be a kind of level of drama attached to it as well. You know, you can kind of see there's Harriet with a gun in both in both books, you know, and it sort of it thrusts her at the center of, you know, in the first book she's sort of Southern Belle. She arrives in the city as the wife of this Confederate commander, Bannister Dunwoody, who's based on a real guy, James Dunwoody Bullock.
Bullock, yeah.
And effectively, you know, it's the worst person in the world who can spy on you is your own wife, effectively. And she's got it in for him. I won't say much more about that because I'll put spoilers in.
Just before you carry on, because I want to know, you know, give us a synopsis on Water Street, right? And give us about the American Abercrombie Square, because there's a little poster there of Lincoln.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
Yes.
That's Dunwoody, isn't it? That shaft there, I think.
Yeah. In the first one, that's Bannister Dunwoody. I've not actually directly. In some cases, I've used real people, and there's one guy in the second picture, Abercrombie Square. That's actually Major General Butler. He was a very interesting character. I'll talk about him in a second. But the first book, Water Street, that is set in 1863, the run up to Gettysburg, and it was at the peak of the shipbuilding activity in Liverpool. So Glasgow would have a bit of an argument on this one, I have to say, but Liverpool was one of the foremost places for shipbuilding on the planet. We had the best technology. The screw propeller was revolutionizing how we got back and forth and cross oceans. And I would equate that with the railway in terms of how important it was to moving people around and commerce. Anyway, that's the background to it. That guy with his back to us, who looks a bit like Jack the Ripper, was actually this Confederate commander. He comes to Liverpool with the aim of really trying to get the Confederacy recognized as a nation, which is a very important thing. And this in history, what I've discovered is this very, very nearly happened. And if that had happened, history could have been very, very different. Britain might well have actually ended up joining the Civil War in one way or the other. I've got very good evidence that British agents were active and against the United States because they were concerned in some part, very powerful quarters, that the United States was getting too powerful and would become the most powerful nation on earth. They were right. But what happens in Water Street is Harriet, who's the kind of poster woman on the front with a gun. She is a foundling from the Choctaw tribe in Louisiana. So she, as a very small child, she gets picked up by these Native Americans. The Choctaws donated to the Irish famine, or to the Irish hunger. They actually donated them when they were in the midst of getting kicked out and forced relocated to Oklahoma. That's her background. She comes to Liverpool with this guy. And it's a big ruse. She's pretending to be something else. She's pretending to be the daughter of a wealthy plantation owner. And from there on in, her mission is to sabotage what he's doing. So she tries to blow up a boat and a ship, ironclad ship in dry dock in Camel Laird. And it leads on all the way through to finding out about the plan to draw Britain into the Civil War. So that's the first book. I'm trying to do that without giving you any spoilers. The second book, and this is something that is absolutely mind-blowing to me, Frank, and I'm sure you'll know a bit about this because I saw your really cool video when you went into number 19 Abercrombie Square. I thought it was great.
I love it.
Now that is actually part of the University of Liverpool now, but it's full of Confederate symbols, that building. And it was called the Confederate White House in Europe, and for no small reason. I've called it the Americans at Abercrombie Square because the two principal characters, and there were more than two, but the two principals were a guy called a merchant called Charles Prelude, and the aforementioned James Dunwoody Bullock, who's actually buried in Toxteth Park Cemetery and Smithdown Road. Now, Bullock, I've got a docket from the university, the archive of Cornell University, that directly records that Bullock sent $35,000 to John Wilkes Booth via a British agent in Montreal. So the money to finance what became the Lincoln assassination, 1864, he sent it. The assassination famously was Ford's Theatre, Washington, 14th of April, 1865. Money came from Liverpool. Not only that, book ended.
So I think I see the two different stories. Obviously, Water Street, so it's about down there, and the Abercrombie Square thing as well. I think it's fascinating, that this particular connection, because what I did with Gloria Estefan, that's when I found out who she was. Like when we went down there, James Street, Paradise Street, I showed them the eagle.
Oh, yeah.
Now I saved that, that.
Yeah,
they were going to knock that down. I was the historical consultant.
Were you?
Yeah, I was the historical.
Oh, Frank, hats off to you, mate. That's brilliant. I didn't know that.
I named 6 places.
Wow.
My daughter keeps saying, why didn't your name go up there? I say, you don't.
Bloody hell, Frank, that's fantastic. Well done, mate. Well, I've got to be that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book. I wrote both the books, so I'm talking to one of the guys. It's partly down to you, mate, if that's the case, because that eagle is something I noticed years ago, and I wanted to know the story behind it, and I researched it, and that sort of led on to the research. It became Water Street.
See, the thing is, John, honestly, he broke us in half,
Did he?
I said, and that particular building that the eagle was on was James Morey's home. Now, James Morey, Thomas Jefferson said, listen, you'll have to send somebody over to England to take to look after our interests. Where Liverpool, our lads are there now, our ships are there now.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was Irish, was James Morey. So if he didn't want to come over, he said, I don't want to go over there, get over there. So he came over and he stayed 41 years.
Wow.
And that was his first home, hence the eagle.
Yeah. Well, that building features in both the books.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
They were
Because
knocking it down, John. They were knocking it down.
well,
Anthony, what kind of buildings have
can
we
you believe that? That sums up, though, a period in the middle to late 20th century, which was hugely they destroyed more than the Luftwaffe ever did. They really did. They did more damage to the city than the kind of harebrained ideas. I know they were trying to improve the city because it was on its knees, but they really took down so much culture. So many fantastic buildings.
Well, they tried to knock down the White Mansion House.
But that's the thing, guys. When people ask me about, why Liverpool, why I'd like to go, I just show them pictures. When I go over, just the architecture that's still there, and to think of what has been lost is criminal. But I just I saw the same thing when I lived in Nashville. Had a book called Nashville Now and Then. Just all the old Victorian stuff that got knocked down for these bland concrete blah buildings.
No.
But no, I mean that's the thing that's always fascinating. One of several things. That's always fascinated me about the city. It's just, and I when I was over back at the end of May and June playing with the guys from Detroit, just showing up, because it was their second trip there. I'm just pointing all this stuff out. I'm like, look at this. All this brilliant architecture and these beautiful buildings.
And so much of it points to the relationship with the US, Dennis. It's great. I mean, I got to know Dennis through, I went to Nashville. I had a film in Nashville. So it was sort of like, I've got this thing about Americans, let's face it. It's just, whatever.
You tolerate us.
I have got African-American sort of ancestry and other kind of possible American links as well to my own family. So, it's sort of, I suppose it's there. It's sort of the ancestors whispering in my ear, if you believe that kind of thing.
Yeah, Frank, it was actually a mutual friend of Pete Wiley that introduced us. Because John had produced a short film that was premiering as the opening film for at the Nashville Film Festival. They were showing John's film prior to the main long story film. And this guy's, met John and several members of the cast, and my ex and I took him around and showed him around and stuff, and he's been putting up with me ever since.
Hanging out in the honky tonks in Nashville.
Yeah.
So this is where all this started, Frank. This stuff. So, but it's great when Dennis comes over.
Can I ask you, John? This is fascinating, really. Especially the period, especially this particular period during the. Any war's horrible. And as Myra says, boys, Myra Page, lovely lady, she says the victors write history, but that is half a truth. The real story is from both sides. And I couldn't agree with her more there, because I'm a specialist on the First World War. And I used to have a book, I lent it out, and I never ever got it back. And it was written by a Swiss general, and it was totally unbiased, and he gave one side and the other side, and fascinating stuff. And the likes of what you've written, John, I love that. That's why I mentioned about Charles Dickens. I'd like you to come and see me sometime and have a look at me play. I've written a play called The Reflection of Dickens, and it's a true story, by the way. It's a true story. It's when Dickens used to come to Liverpool and do his penny readings. Anyway, that's by the way.
It's interesting. Again, Frank, yet again, you put your finger on it right, because in Water Street, I featured the Bridewell off Campbell Square. And you know the link with the Bridewell, don't you? That's a famous one.
I was telling this year about it.
Well, Dickens was appointed a special constable there in 1860, wasn't he? Right. So that Bridewell, there were dotted. Basically, Dennis, I don't know. Have you been in the Bridewell? Have I taken you in there before?
No, I haven't.
You'd remember it. It's basically a police jail. It's a really intimidating looking building. You only have to look at it and think, I would not like to be banged up in there. I really wouldn't, because it's a big Victorian jail. I'll take it. It's now a pub, so I'll take it in there next time you're over there.
John, in the 80s, used to be a rehearsal room for bands.
Frankie
been derelict for years.
Yeah.
And then I used to rehearse amongst hundreds and hundreds of bands, and it was quite spooky then, because obviously it was done up, and then modern times obviously was taken over, opened up as a restaurant and stuff, but it's still got that vibe of historical menace.
Yes. Yes.
Well, you don't want to be there after dark, after closing time, do you?
Absolutely.
Oh, no.
This is why I wanted to kind of, it's great that you can actually go and sit inside a place, because you're absolutely right. It's quite pleasant now. You can go and sit and have a pint and just sit in one of those cells. But it doesn't take much of imagination to imagine someone banging the door shut on you, and all of a sudden things can get a bit weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's, again, I like to take people into the places and give them a real feel of the sort of the fear. There's a character called Mr. Aki, who's this kind of former sailor who jumped ship, African constable who runs the Bridewell. You really don't want to mess with Mr. Aki, but you've read it,
Yeah, so, he was one of my favorite characters in the book.
So and I mean that comes from the kind of the old Liverpool roots, because there's huge connections with Nigeria as well. So, yeah, Bridewell, another place. So it's very interesting you mentioned that, Frank, about Charles Dickens, because Dickens is referenced in the especially in the first book.
Smashing. I'll tell you another thing as well, which is so ironic, and it's about the Bridewell. I was asked to give a talk down there, and I said, yeah, okay. So anyway, I went to Billy Butler was the compere.
Nice.
Billy.
Good old
Anyway,
Billy.
I went down. This is the Saturday night, and there was a fella. I don't watch Coronation Street. There was a fella out of Coronation Street, and he was there. A fella named Dev. And I'll tell you who it was for. It was for I always forget his first name. David Guest.
Oh yeah, Liza Minnelli's fella.
Yeah, and he was a smash.
Kind of.
he got to go over to the States, you know. He said, will you come over to the States and get it? I said, yes, sure, you know, never did like. But anyway, that's by the by. So we were there. It was chock-a-block. This was on the, I don't know whether it was the Friday or the Saturday night. So I gave this, Billy was there doing it, but Billy Joe's brilliant. I was there and I did what I had to do. And it shut down on the Monday. I was gone on the Monday. That irony, you know. Listen, before I forget, lads, for you and Dennis, I've been talking to Jason, and in the new year, you know, I'm not talking like months ahead. I'm talking about weeks ahead from now. Mm-hmm. How would you like to do a show with the likes of yourself, John, and Dennis especially? And I'll tell you for why. With the inauguration of a new administration on the 20th of January coming in, I want to talk about how America is today and how it has been for the last 4 years under Joe Biden, right? And what is their future now with the likes of Donald Trump coming in for a second term.
Yeah.
Second term. Yeah. And the people he has around him and what he's promised the people to get in, the vote, you know, he went out of his way to say he wants to stop wars. He hates wars and killings and everything. Which
I don't want to go too much on a tangent, Frank, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but he's already walking back statements about what one of the promises he was going to do, and everybody's going crazy about here, was this, the rising costs, especially of groceries, and he's already walking those comments back. So I'll just kind of leave it at that.
No, this is what I want to
things to come.
No, Dennis, this is what I want. This is why I want to have a special show.
Sure.
Talking about, how we feel as well over here about America, about Joe Biden, what he did. And I've seen streams, and I'm telling you now, it's all over. Like Missouri, I was looking at that, Philadelphia, I was looking at California, and it was shot in New York.
Yeah.
They look like third world countries.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Mate, Frank, I've seen it in Los Angeles. Right, Santa Monica is not a place you associate with being poverty-stricken. Santa Monica, seriously, world center of the film industry. Right, you walk down there, and there's people at bus stops with, and it's not like, not being funny. They haven't got addiction problems or anything like that. A lot of them, they've clearly got nothing. They've got like shopping trolleys with everything they own. Mm-hmm. And it makes me sick. You see it. There's cardboard cities, and this is, as I say, Santa Monica. It's not exactly what you might call a ghetto. Yeah. It's everywhere, absolutely everywhere. I'm sure. Or Dennis, you live there, mate. So you tell us,
So would you would you be willing to do that, Dennis and John, along with myself and Anthony?
Absolutely. Can I just say as well, just on a quick one, because we're on this, the character that the rather rotund chappie in the second picture, so the Americans Abercrombie Square, that's a guy called Benjamin Butler, who was a major general. He was actually the governor of occupation in New Orleans, and he's quite a shady character in both books. Now, Butler is partly based on Trump in some ways. He's based upon a real guy, but he's partly based on Trump. And something they like to do with him, he was so unpopular in New Orleans that they actually put a print of his face on the bottom of the chamber pots.
Wow. Wow.
Now, you've got to be pretty unpopular for someone to do that, haven't you, really?
No, well, this is it. This is why they say about, I like a face of such a body on my toilet roll. So
I was asked to do that years ago for a well-known lady politician of England who was...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right. Name can't be mentioned, thankfully.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, though.
Yeah.
Dave Wakeling wrote a song about her, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It just shows you, though, doesn't it? Listen, John, will you come on, like I'm talking about my history show, by the way, not like what's going to be planned to do with Dennis, yourself, and Anthony, myself, obviously. But will you come on the history show at some point and talk about history? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Now, where can we get, because I have to have a break now. Where do you get these? Where can you get them? Amazon?
You can get them. Yeah, you can get them on Amazon. You can get them from any good bookshop. It's to say Amazon and any good bookshop. But you can get them and absolutely go to Amazon if you want that kind of ease of delivery. But it's available. I've got signed copies, and if you're listening in from Liverpool, I've got signed copies and Waterstones and Liverpool One. It's in News from Nowhere. It's all the good bookshops across town. You can get copies of them.
Well, News from Nowhere is in Bowl Street, isn't it?
That's right. That's my favourite, to be honest. I love that bookshop. It's a survivor. Especially with Bowl Street changing so much, it's a real survivor, that place. So if you can support it, please do.
It is. Yeah. And, this is what we'll talk about as well, with the likes of Dennis and Anthony. We'll talk about how America, believe it or not, I know this, how it's affected Liverpool and how Liverpool affected America.
Yeah, a lot of cross-pollination.
Yeah, there's loads. It's like I don't know whether you're aware of this, John, and you, Dennis. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but two people, one came over from Russia, the other came over from Sicilia, right? And they became silver screen icons. One of them won an Oscar, and they came through Liverpool, and they couldn't. Well, this little lad, he came from Odessa, gets here, and he couldn't speak a word of English. And anyway, he went into this particular school, St. Francis Xavier's. Now, this is a Catholic school. Yeah, he was a little Jewish boy, and he learned his English right there. And another lad who came from Sicilia, little boy, came with his family. Now, these were on the way to America, but there was a waiting list to get over there. And so they had to work or whatever, the parents. And this little Sicilian, he went into St. Francis Xavier's school as well, which is in Shore Street and Salisbury Street. It's in between both. Now, the little Russian lad, why it's so significant, who learned his English in Liverpool, of all places, he said the very first words on a movie, "You ain't seen nothing yet," and that was Al Jolson. Al Jolson.
Wow.
The other lad who learned his English, the little Sicilian, his name, who went on to win an Oscar, his name was Ernesto Bornini. And obviously they anglicised his name to Ernest Borgnine.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, it's things like that which is so special, especially getting over to the likes of, do you know the little tag they had on WOP without passports or without papers?
Yeah.
The Americans were saying, you know, obviously the customs, they were saying that, you know, can you do something, Telegraph, you know, to Liverpool, can you do something? Because it's taking days to process these people. There's thousands just coming in. And we don't know what to do. We can't categorise them. Anyway, Liverpool, the customs here in Liverpool says, okay, so when you see old film of people getting off the ships at Ellis Island, you've got the things on. It was on here, you know, the labels with WOP without passports, and it was the Liverpool Customs who actually did that and put the labels on because they were asking. And it was brilliant for them. They categorised them. You get over there and you come here, you know, without the passports and papers. And so they categorised them. And the point I'm trying to make is that was that connection is never spoken about.
Yeah.
And imagine the likes of Ernest Borgnine going over there and his family, you know, maybe they had labels on, I don't know. And maybe the likes of Al Jolson's family, they had labels on, I don't know. But they went from Liverpool, got off at Ellis Island, and the rest is history. And that's presidents have come here. You know, one of the greatest presidents, in my opinion, is John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And his family came here, stayed in Liverpool to get over to America, which they did, Joseph Kennedy. You know, so the great connection with Liverpool and America needs to be explained more on a show that the four of us can do, you know.
I've got so much more, Frank. So much more.
Well, I mean,
go on.
Robert Morris, who was called the financier of the American Revolution, well, guess where he was from?
Yeah.
Go on.
Liverpool.
Yeah, that's right. He owned most of New York State, this guy.
Yeah.
He was incredibly rich. Yeah. It's
can I tell you about we'll have to finish, boys. Can I tell you about do you know the signing of 1774, the Declaration of Independence? 2 years later, it was the American War of Independence. And one of the top signatories was a fella from Dale Street, and his name was Robert Morris, and his name is still there.
Yeah.
From Dale Street.
Yep,
there's a copy of that declaration in the Athenaeum.
Yeah, the Athenaeum,
yeah.
Smashing it. And I went to see Charles Dickens' signature because I love Dickens. So listen, John and Dennis, would you do that for me? You know, and
of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Frank.
So it'll only be like a week or so after the New Year. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I'll be back. So. Yeah, I'll be back from Nashville, you know, visiting family for Christmas. So yeah, I'll be around.
Excellent. I'm amazed up with that, and honestly, I'm delighted. And we can still talk about your book as well, John, if you don't mind.
Fabulous. I'd love to.
Have you enjoyed it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I've had a ball, Frank. Really. And of course, every day I see Dennis is always a good day.
Yeah. And do you know what? I always miss him.
Yeah, we got to fix that.
In May, he came over and he said, "Oh no, was it last year? I don't know.
It was 2 years ago. Yeah, and that's when the pub club fiasco kind of happened.
And he said to me, "I'll be in the Cavern Club." And I went, "Okay," but I got mixed up. It must have been, or Dennis did. And I went in the Cavern Club, and I'm looking for Dennis and his band, and I'm talking to these people. I said, "Is this fella bit?" No. So anyway, I came out, and my daughter see me. She was over the road in this pub, and she's shouting me. Anyway, I said, I haven't seen Dennis. And where Dennis was, he was in the, and I was going over there. Only Francine shouted me, and I went up with Francine and her friends to this pub, and I was going down to the pub, and unfortunately, I never seen him.
Yeah, I got to see John when I came over this past spring, so that was great.
But I made up, Dennis, that you'd introduced John. When you told me about him, I was made up, and I'm absolutely, my expectations has gone like that, smashing.
Well, Frank, I have 2 superpowers, my friend. One, I always know somebody no matter where I am. Yeah. And 2, I can always find the nearest pub. Yeah. Give Francine my love, and I heard about the car situation. I hope she's going to be okay.
Yeah, she's just texted me there, so I'll be ringing her after the show. But I will, Dennis. She might be looking at her.
Appreciate it. John, give Katie my best as well. Give her a hug.
Will do.
Yeah.
All right,
John. Thank you so much, John. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks or whatever, next few weeks. And you, Dennis, you're always there for me. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. So pleasure.
And I'm still just I don't know what the other fella Jason's going to put on. This little clip on there. I'll be seeing you people after this clip.
This is the Cathedral of Christ the King, and it seems like a second home, along with the Anglican Cathedral. But every time I come here, we seem to learn a lot more history, and none more so than a person that was actually born on this site. People sometimes term loosely individuals as heroes. So what does an individual have to do to become such a hero? Let's go back in time and picture this scene. Thunder and lightning. A young girl running through the streets of Liverpool, heavily pregnant, banging on the wakehouse door right here. The door opened. The authorities didn't realise that this girl was heavily pregnant. She collapsed, and unfortunately she died. But she was given birth at the same time. And when she gave birth, the authorities panicked because the lady died. They thought that the child had died as well, so they rushed him over to the chapel where they baptised him, because obviously they thought that he was going to die. And they baptised him John, after the Baptist. And they gave him the old Anglo-Saxon word, kirk, meaning church. So this young boy became John Kirk. And John Kirk, his birth was actually the catalyst for Charles Dickens's Oliver Twist, because Oliver Twist, he was born in a workhouse to a mother who died, and Charles Dickens read this particular report, and as I said, it put the seed in his head. And who was Oliver Twist's benefactor? It was none other than Mr. Brownlow, his paternal grandfather, hence Brownlow Hill Workhouse. But what happened to John Kirk? John Kirk escaped certain death because workhouses at that time were an absolutely dreadful place to be placed in. Because the only time that you ever came out to freedom was feet first, because you were tied to the workhouse for the rest of your natural life. John Kirk escaped the workhouse, and what an incredible life story he had. What happened to Kirk was an extraordinary true story. He somehow got to Lincoln. No one knows how he got to Lincoln, by the way. He just all of a sudden happened to turn up there, and he joined the army. Now don't forget, in those days it was hand to mouth, and that hand to mouth, you had to do something, and he was just a young boy, a young man. And he joined the Lincolnshire Regiment. He became a drummer boy. Then he progressed to being a bugler. And from there, obviously, a rifleman. He was sent over to India, and it was the Raj, belonging to the British Empire. And during the 1857 Indian uprising, what he did, he volunteered along with 2 sergeants to go and rescue the captain of the regiment, the captain's wife, children, servants. So we volunteered along with the 2 sergeants and went, and he actually fought hand-to-hand combat 2,000 Punjabis, just these few men. And they actually got the captain, his wife, children, servants to safety. And he was awarded the Victoria Cross along with the 2 sergeants. But he never got it right away. He had to wait a further 3.5 years until November 1860. And if you could imagine, in that time, this man was suffering from a debilitating disease called narcolepsy. He was also suffering from rheumatoid arthritis. So this man was in pain anyway. In November 1860, he was court-martialed just prior to receiving his Victoria Cross. They couldn't execute him because any menial offence, if you're court-martialed, you were executed, as an example for the army. But unfortunately for the army, they couldn't execute him because in a few days' time he was actually going to receive his Victoria Cross off the Queen herself, Victoria. He stood for 12 solid hours, 48 hours after being punished, because they had to punish him, and they gave him 50 lashes. And he stood there waiting for his Victoria Cross off the Queen. She knew nothing at all about the punishment. All as she knew that she was going to present this brave man. She came, she gave him the Victoria Cross, congratulated him. She walked away. After she disappeared, he was marched by 2 officers through the portals. This is Buckingham Palace, where he was stripped of his uniform, stripped of his medal, dishonourably discharged, and he was left destitute. Less than 2 minutes after receiving his Victoria Cross, he made his way back to Liverpool. Now, why he made his way back to Liverpool is this. He never, ever, ever forgot his mother. He always wanted to know what his proper name was. So he made his way back to his spiritual home, which was Brownlow Hill Workhouse. He got back, finally got back. Banged on the door like his mother did. Unfortunately, he was in such pain because of his 50 lashes, still suffering from rheumatoid arthritis. He was brought through, readmitted, brought through the dormitories, where he lay down on his bed and died. And that's the extraordinary story of Liverpool's first recipient of the Victoria Cross. Now, what I'm going to say now is that allegedly he was drunk on parade. However, if we look at it more closely, with that debilitating disease called narcolepsy, where you slur your speech and you stagger, he could have easily been suffering then and not being drunk on parade. But unfortunately, he was court-martialed for it.
Was you near that?
I think that one of the most breaking stories of injustice I've ever heard in my life. were
We'll
powerful.
bring John in to see what he thinks thought of that. What did you think of that, John?
That was well off the scale, really. Unfortunately, I think you're absolutely right. The sort of the way the British Army was back then, there was no quarter given, was there? The only quarter he got was he escaped the noose, but yeah, I think I'd never heard of that guy, and I didn't know that all those connections were in place. I know about that workhouse in Brownlow Hill because I actually work on the grounds of that place in the Rebels.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And it puts a shiver up my spine. It really does. It's a brand new building of glass and metal, but there's
definitely
something about it.
And you work there because I don't know whether you're aware of this, to be honest. Most probably you do, I don't know. Did you know that in the crypt of the Catholic Cathedral, right, that was a workhouse basement, right, that was there, and the Liverpool University bought the workhouse. They actually bought it, so they made facilities there, and what they were testing with were neutrons. And there was a chap, Liverpool lecturer, great physicist, and he split the atom. He split the atom. And the most secretive of all secrets of a project was the Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer, they were all going like these, whatever they did with these things. And I'm going to bring in Dennis here because this is the type of connection we have. And they brought in, they said, we'll have to send for this fella over in Liverpool. Who is he? Oh, a fella named Sir James Chadwick. And he went over. Now, I asked when they made this film with Kieran, what's his name? Cillian Murphy. I said, is Chadwick here? And they said, no. I said, well, I'm not watching it because it was he who split the atom.
It's crazy, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not going to make a joke of that. He could make a bomb at that discovery, couldn't he? Like,
I actually had an older brother of a childhood friend of mine from Michigan that was an actor in the Oppenheimer movie. He played a congressional committee person. Can't remember the exact title. May have been a senator or what have you. But yeah, he found working on that film particularly fascinating.
Yeah, it was a fascinating project. Don't forget, when you look at these particular films, shall we say, that portray real life people. That's why I was made up with John on his book, to be honest. Honestly, I'm going to show it again. And that's why I said to you, John, are these fictionalized? But real life things, what's going on? Because as I said before, I'm a specialist on Dickens. And Dickens, when you read things, all these characters are based on real life characters in his books.
Yeah.
In all his novels.
Every single one, even Harriet to a sense. I mean, Harriet is on the surface seems very fictional, but Harriet's based on a few people. She's based partly on Harriet Tubman, who was a spy, notorious spy, brilliant spy, in during the American Civil War, and also Florence Maybrick as well. You know about who was he was married to James Maybrick and famously put an American woman.
And Harriet was very involved in the Underground Railroad.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted that kind of true grit because there have been in some quarters, and I think it's just silliness really, but some quarters have gone, oh, this is just politically correct rewriting history sort of thing, and actually it isn't. Female spies were about a big way during the American Civil War. Absolutely, exploded because they realised that it was a kind of secret weapon. They didn't really expect women to be spies.
the only female, like, you know, it was well known as a spy is Mata Hari.
Yes.
You know, so if you know, if you're told it was a female spy, everyone would just say Mata Hari was a female spy.
Mata Hari, yeah.
You know, so and she was executed, unfortunately. But the likes of this girl sounds fascinating.
Well, in the second book, there's a woman called Kate Warren who was one of the main agents for the Pinkerton Detective Agency. And the Pinkertons are the forerunners of the CIA, and they still actually exist now. But they were the top secret service, and Kate Warren was sort of recruited for a special set of skills. Let's put it that way. So
go away.
She features in the second book because the Pinkertons were involved in the protecting Lincoln during the assassination and so forth. So they were sort of involved in that kind of spy game going on.
Wow.
So yeah, it's not quite as people maybe might see it. You know, I'm just putting in African American and female characters just because it's paying lip service to anything. This is actually stuff that really happened.
And Frank and Anthony, please get a copy of Water Street as soon as you can. One thing I loved, John, was just the pace of the story in the book. There was no lag time, no drag in it whatsoever. And my friend Jenna, that picked up a copy of it down here in Florida, she absolutely loved it. So when I told her about the second one that's coming out, she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll definitely be getting a copy of that ASAP." But just the pace of the storytelling, there's, like I said, there's just no drag time. The action in the story, it's a real page turner, guys. You definitely won't want to put it down once you pick it up.
I am so looking forward to reading it. So much so, I've just been in, see the missus and the kids, and said, "I know what I want for Christmas now." There's two of them. It sounds fascinating. So both and the stories.
You know, my thing was growing up in Michigan, and then eventually spending 27 years in Nashville. Just the contrast in terms of when I was a kid growing up in Detroit, the only time. There's the big Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. Ford and Edison and Firestone, those guys started a museum there. It was dedicated to a lot of things that were going on back at the turn of the last century. But they also had a lot of things from the colonial period. And they have an outdoor section called Greenfield Village where, they'll take a cottage from the Cotswolds, brick by brick, and rebuild it. They got a Swiss chalet. They got the Wright brothers bicycle shop where they developed their airplane. So it's a fascinating place. If you guys ever get a chance to go, check it out. But, a little, some bits and pieces about the Civil War there. And the only time we ever really saw anything else was up at the state capitol, about an hour and a half away in Lansing, where you'd see like the regimental flags and all those kinds of things. And, my dad lived in a smaller town about an hour and a half west of Detroit. And they had a small little Civil War related museum there. But then you go down to Nashville and you got all the battle sites, Battle of Murfreesboro, Battle of Franklin, Fort Negley, which they totally revamped, John, since you came over.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah. And it's a state park now. It's really nice.
Well, but, I was actually in Nashville as a kid. I went to Nashville as a 10-year-old, and I always remember we were in the swimming pool, and this lady was in the balcony, and she was sitting there fanning herself, as you do. And my dad was sitting there smoking a pipe. He liked his Bruno Flake, so he'd be like that with his pipe. And she took one look at him and went, "You got to be a Yankee." My dad laughed his head off, being a Scouse Evertonian.
I mean, when my mom went down with her job with American Airlines back in the 80s, that's how we all ended up there. She got a little bit of that. and talking about her accent. I'm like, well, wait a minute, we're from Michigan. We don't have an accent. You guys are the ones with the accent.
So you think?
And then and just like all the county seats around metropolitan Nashville, all the different counties, they have their little squares with anchored by the courthouse, but they all have that statue, that Confederate soldier, and they're all facing north with this kind of defiant look on their faces, like still come and get me.
This is it. I was speaking to, hopefully in the next year, this is only speculative, but we're speaking to a Liverpool actor, a young woman, brilliant actor. She's actually from Louisiana, and she was telling me that it is so prevalent now, even now, that you get taught in schools about the lost cause, and kind of a really kind of skewed version of history, and it's still we can talk about this actually, no doubt, when Frank brings us on for the talking about the next year and the presidential sort of repercussions, absolutely.
It's very important, that, to be honest. Like, can I tell you a couple of things? Only a couple. Like the Victoria Cross, which is the highest military medal. You didn't know I won that, did you, John?
Wow, that is fantastic. That is unbelievable. An original, of course.
Yeah, I won it. It's mine. It's mine, though. Didn't you know that?
Wait, no, it didn't, Frank. Where did he win that?
I won it in 1984 when I went to Goodison Park.
Right. You've done this one before. I was trying not to. Honestly, I thought he's going to get me like a kipper here,
Yeah.
It's like what you said before, and never told you, your dad,
Yeah, I know. The sad thing is, it's probably true, especially if you're in the Bullens.
Well, guys, I just got one more real quick thing about the Civil War bit, if I may, because another unique experience that I had, and my second ex-wife, not my son's mom, but the Brazilian, John met her when he and his crew came over to visit Nashville with the film thing. She's from a town in Brazil called Americana. Her ancestry is actually Italian on her dad's side, from northern Italy. And I still got copies of the passport when he came over in 1888 to Brazil.
Wow.
But Americana was settled by what they called, down there, the Confederados.
Yeah.
They were the Confederate refugees that still wanted their plantation lifestyle. And the American cemetery in Americana is in the middle of this big sugarcane field. Yeah. And they have a celebration every April, usually sometime tends to fall around Easter. But they get up in period costumes and music and all that stuff. And the first time she took me there, I was just like blown away by it. The cemetery, the graveyard's back behind the chapel. And you got gravestones that are dating back to the late 18th, early 19th century with the birth dates of the people that went down there. And they had a plaza that had this big Confederate battle flag painted on the ground next to a performance space for the musicians who play and the dancers. And they had an obelisk, again, painted with a Confederate battle flag on all four sides, flanked by the names of the founding families that went down there. And I got to meet with some of the descendants, and let's just say those conversations were very interesting, coming from Poles and Czechs that didn't come to America until the 19th century, after the war was over, late 19th, early 20th. So just different perspective that I had growing up, and then just to have those types of interactions between living in the South as long as I did, and then
Dennis, it's a reminder. It might have been 160 odd years, but it's only a few generations though. You know, all of us here. I remember Victorians as a kid. You know, I spoke to old people who were Victorians. You know, who could remember Victoria on the throne. You know, and that's amazing because I'm only 23. You know, but you know, but it kind of brings it into perspective how close it really is, and I know the Confederates had a huge influence in Central and South America, you know, particularly Mexico. They piled into Mexico. You know, one of the reasons why you had the Confederate Army was because they were trained in these wars.
Can I just go on to a few comments? There's the Anfield Roll. Good evening, fellas. Hope you're all well. And look at all those pints and scotches and everything.
Up the Reds.
Yeah, I feel drunk just looking at that.
Lovely man.
Reminds me, you need to get a vodka tonic after we sign off.
These are lovely people, by the way, you know. And get onto this one. The Anfield Row. Dennis Pepperack has a fleeting resemblance to Tom Conti, and I agree with him.
Thank you.
Totally agree with him.
Yeah. When I was a few stone lighter and a few years younger, I also got compared a lot to Michael J. Fox a long time ago.
J. Really. It's a shame about him, you know, the way the diseases.
Yeah, the Parkinson's is really kicking in.
Can I tell you who I had a cup of tea? I had a cup of tea and he has a cup of coffee. And I sat there. Yeah, I went up to Scotland. Then I was with my one then, and to see this couple. Anyway, we went there, and this Kenny lad said to me, "I'll take you where I'm going to, where we're going tonight." This is on a Saturday, and the two girls went to a market or something, and we went to this place called Duck Bay, and walked in, chatting to this fella, this big, honestly big monster he was. And he said, "You can't come in, you can't come in." You know, big Scottish fella, he was a big monster. And I, you know, Kenny was saying, "But my uncle owns it." He said, "I don't care whose uncle owns it, you're not coming in, go away." And I went, "Come on, Kenny." I said, "It's no use arguing, you know, let's go." And he turned around and went, "From Liverpool?" He said, "Yeah." And he went, "You looked after me last week, only last week." I said, "Me?" He said, "No, you Scousers looked after me and my mates." They were down in Liverpool at the pits, you know, the pits, you know, by Gracie's, the bottom of Everton Valley, playing five-a-side football. And I said, "Go away." He said, "Yeah." So anyway, he said, "Yeah, I'll just go in and have a quick look around." He said, "But there's a guest up there, don't go near him." Bothered. So anyway, we went to Kenny was there, and I looked over at this guest, and I said to Kenny, "Let's go over." And he went, "No." I said, "I'm going over." So I went over, and I said, "Hello," and he stood up and shook me hand. He said, "You want a coffee?" I said, "No." I said, "I only drink tea." And he just went like that. This fella came over, young fella, bit me tea, cup of coffee for him, because he was already drinking coffee. And I had a great conversation with him, saying, "I love your work," and whatever. He mentioned the Beatles, John Lennon, because he said, you sound like John Lennon. I said, "You reckon?" He said, "Yeah, you do." Anyway, he said, "I'm a great admirer of them, but this fella's a big jazz fan, by the way." So anyway, I said, "Listen, this is me to him. This is true. This." I said, "Listen, I have to go." I said, "This is, no one will believe me when I tell them I've just had a cup of tea with you." So as I was walking away, I said, "Thank you so much, mister." And he turned around to me and he went, "Hey, Frank, my name's Clint. Just call me Clint."
Wow. Nice.
Wow.
You know, you can't get any, you know, such a lovely pit. Dead true.
Yeah.
Skin's unbelievable, you know.
Still
He had the
working.
glow like Dennis there, you know, like that Palm Beach tan, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
still
you
at
know,
it, 90 years old and still at it. It's
He's
phenomenal.
still at it. He's incredible.
Yep.
It's incredible.
but you know, when you see people, who you think that, you know, you can't approach, if you know what I mean, and they're lovely. They're just lovely. Meryl Streep. She was doing a film with Hugh Grant, and I was walking through this particular building because I had a group of people with me, and I just left them, just been in the town hall, and I was walking through, and it's just nuts. You know, and this Meryl Streep was walking there, and I went, all right, Meryl. And she went, hi there. She said a couple of, you just think you know them. And she said, how you doing? I said, I'm doing okay. You know, how are you? I said, what are you doing there? She said, I'm filming, making a movie. And I went, oh, yeah, that's all I got to know, that she was doing a film with the lovely Hugh Grant. You know?
Yeah, they do a lot of filming up there, don't they, though? They do use Liverpool for... Well, you know, I knew the bit about Peaky Blinders and all that, but
yeah, no, you know, Water Street, as you know, people know, they filmed there as New York.
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
You know, because it's incredible. Do you ever remember John Lennon? And he was in Central Park. He was just walking about, and he said, "It's great being here because I'm not mobbed. I'm not mobbed." He said, "But if I was walking through Sefton Park, he was walking through, you know, whatever park he was walking through, and he said, I'd just be mobbed. I'd just be mobbed." But he still missed Liverpool.
Yeah.
And that was Lennon, you know.
yeah,
He said New York reminded him of Liverpool.
Yeah, he did say that. Yeah, of course he did.
And I can see that. Like, I mean, I've been speaking of Ellis Island. I've been speaking with the curator there about maybe some of the joint projects. Also, Greenwich Village as it was, and the Bronx Irish tenements there, and very similar to the courthouses here. Really similar. The kind of the Italian links as well, obviously with New York, but the way the cities grew in the mid 19th century were actually very, very similar. You know, and that makes sense that they would double for somewhere like New York, because they, again, even in the early 20th century, they were using similar designs to the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I had an ambition to do a project, and I'm going back to 2015. So that's going on 10 years now. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to go to Naples. I wanted to go there. I wanted to go to Dublin. I wanted, obviously Liverpool. But when I was talking, he said, well, what about Odessa? I said, no, there's a war going on. There's a civil war. And he never had a clue about it. I said, you can't go there. It's war-torn. So we went, oh, okay. And it ends up in Ellis Island, because who I wanted to do, this project I wanted to do, it was my ambition, was to talk about the Italians, the Jews, and the Irish, all making their way to Ellis Island, to America, and going through there. And that was my ambition. And as I said, I said, we'll leave Odessa out. We can talk about that. We can show like pictures or film or bits of film or whatever, and just never came to fruition, unfortunately. And that's one of the greatest regrets of my life, I wanted to do that.
Napoli was the last port I visited just before I got out of the Navy back in 1990, and I got to see Maradona play.
Wow.
Really? Did you
They were playing AC Milan. They told us to stay away from the stadium. And of course, Italy was going to be hosting the World Cup that summer.
Yeah.
Of course, knuckleheaded me, I'm like, I'm not missing this.
Yeah.
So I went there, and and those guys are crazy. I mean, those ultras are absolutely nuts. And thankfully, Napoli won the match. But they're carrying around black and red striped coffins on their shoulders after the match.
Well, you're saying about these wonderful people, because they are. Because my family, came from the area. When you see the likes of yourself, Dennis, and going to Naples, you're there, you go and watch your match, and you see, to me, the greatest footballer that's ever lived was Maradona, and you've seen him play.
Hands down. Yeah, hands down, the greatest.
Incredible, man.
Yeah, never to be seen again.
Clint Eastwood to me.
Yeah, and that's, I think I got bit by the travel bug. We had a caravan when I was a kid. So, being so close to Canada and around the Great Lakes, we'd go hit all these campsites and things and come down here on holiday to Florida. But when I got to go to Dusseldorf back in summer of '82 on a summer exchange program, that's when I really got bit hard by the travel bug. And that was part of the reason why I went in the Navy. My folks divorced, and my money to go to university got flushed down the toilet. And I'm just like, I could sit around Michigan, which, Detroit in the 80s, the economy there wasn't that great. And that's a whole other thing in terms of the economic turnaround and the rebuilding that they've had going on there. It's absolutely phenomenal what's happening up there. But at the time, it was time for me to get out, and just the experiences that I had when, just traveling around different bits. Did 2 tours in the Mediterranean, did 1 up in the North Atlantic, and then just the different places in the States that we visited. I met U2 in Boston back in 1987 when they were playing the Joshua Tree tour, and I got Bono and Larry Mullen's autograph on my Beatles 62 to 66 cassette tape, and bumping into Ian McCullough and the Bunnymen were over to play in Norfolk, Virginia, and that was a fun night out. But I've had a very unique life and very enjoyable one.
Well, there's a question from the Anfield Row. JP Maxwell, I'd like to ask you a little question. What are your thoughts about A1? Do you think it is a good thing? And I've been looking at your works, Campervan Women, and I'm going to read.
Wow, someone's really got stuck in there. Thanks, Anfield Row. Yeah, because Campervan Woman is another book that I've got on just kind of as a Kindle book. So the historical books are being published by Benny and Kearney and Hawksmoor, with Campervan Woman's slightly different. It's a book I wrote a few years ago, and it's about modern sort of espionage in many ways. It's a Scouser at the bottom of it. He was kind of an ex-MI5 agent who tours Europe in a campervan with a dog. Yeah, as you do. Anyway, so the question about AI. Well, AI, I use AI a fair amount in doing trailers and artwork. Yeah, but I'm also kind of long trained in post-production and as an illustrator as well. So I'm not going to sort of say that I just push a button and things happen. I think that is a problem with it in a way. So I think it's a fair question that you've got to be careful with it, because in terms of the creative industries, and I know there's a far-reaching thing to do with how we live actually in connected with AI, but in terms of the creative industries, I teach digital writing at LJMU, so I say to my students, yes, it's a difficulty potentially, but it's also an opportunity. And it's a little bit like, the invention of the electric guitar, or the invention of the computer, really, or the typewriter. It's another tool, and it can be used in a really positive, creative way if you're putting the creative input into it. I don't use it to write because, to be perfectly honest, I think the things like ChatGPT, it's great if you want to bang together a little bit of marketing copy or something like that. But for creative writing, or actually I would say even for historical writing in many ways, it's garbage because it doesn't contextualize. It doesn't find a human sort of connection. So I would never use it for writing at all. And all my research is based on books I've read and archives I've gone to, so I don't use it for that either. But I do use it sometimes to create graphics, and but again, I will manipulate those graphics, and I'll use like 3D modeling applications like Unreal Studio and so forth. So yes, it's a potential issue, but I also think it's something that's not said enough that it's an opportunity too.
That's incredible. The Ottoman says if you have a good graphics card from NVIDIA, you could get access to free AI. I've got a 30 or 3090, and I can run a full AI offline without any internet.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, I've got an NVIDIA card, so yeah. Message me off Ottoman Turk. Come find me and we'll talk.
And even as a musician, I mean,
I speak fluent geek.
It sounds like you're a band, doesn't it? Ottoman Turk. And now the Ottoman Turks, and there they are, and he's coming out with a Ottoman Turk.
But as a musician, I don't, the bit that the Beatles did with it, because they had that really crappy demo tape. And yeah, I can see where it can come in handy when they're trying to pull up and regenerate certain tracks to do, the Now and Then single. To kind of help embellish John's voice, or, they were trying to embellish, some George guitar bits and that sort of thing. But, and again, knowing a lot of people in Nashville that, I'm probably the only musician that went there not to do music, because being a rocker from Detroit, I wasn't really a big fan of country music. But the whole thing about, perfect pitch on the vocals and auto-tune and all those types of things. Yeah, that slippery slope, they already started going down that for quite some time.
Definitely a negative. I mean, I take Anfield Raw's point there as well about, mentioning you, Anthony. I really do. And I think it's something that it's the Wild West out there, and there's got to be a sort of like level of responsibility attached to this. I mean, something I do is I credit everything, and if I use anything as a prompt, it's kind of it's found organically. So I'll use my own illustrations, which aren't very good, but I will sort of use that and kind of feed it in and bring it together from that. But I think I totally agree, and I've got to be honest, I haven't got the answer to that. I think there's going to be call for artists from now until forever. They thought that the invention of the photograph would destroy the artists. It didn't. They thought that the moving image and television would destroy film. It didn't. I think art forms have a way of sticking around. I think composition and the human input into art is actually something that is going to stay around for a long, long time. You just can't mimic that. It's down to how we feel and how we interpret the world. So I don't think it can take it away. What do you think?
And that was one of the big points of the convention, John, that the actors had the guild that went on strike and shut Hollywood down. Earlier in the year. It took them forever to kind of get that sorted, but that was one of the main points was how AI was going to influence how television and film production was going to be going forward.
I'm kind of with Ben Affleck in this though, because Affleck said something very interesting about it. He said, "Yes, definitely get this all signed up, make sure that it's watertight." But the thing to remember is that it's very, very difficult to AI to mimic a performance. I've played around with AI voices, and I will never use an AI voice for for an audiobook or anything like that. It's just crap. No matter what you do with it, you can't use it. It's just unusable. So yeah, I think there's a long way to go, but I do think human input will be at the heart of everything. There's no AI without human endeavor and input. If it wouldn't have any.
You know, I made a record, by the way.
You did?
Yeah.
This I gotta hear.
Yeah, honestly, show you. You know. Even Jason will put no. You've heard of Kitty Wilkinson, haven't you?
Oh yes.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I gave a song, and who backed me was who backed me? I forgot his name. Oh, Billy Kingsley. I'm sorry, I forgot who backed me. Billy Kingsley. Anyways, Kingsley, you know, great fella. But
Liverpool Lug Song.
Oh, there you go.
And that was the Kitty.
Nice.
No,
Wow.
you know, one of them, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, and it was great, you know. That's how I became a millionaire. That's how I got this place here behind.
Residuals. It's all about the residuals.
The residual. So listen, John, will you come down before Christmas? Try and get down and have a look at my script.
Well, speaking of, if I may, guys, I know John's met him. My other mate, Steve O'Toole, that I stay with when I go over there. His dad, Terry, was the keyboardist in the Mojos. And he's a solicitor by day, but he's been writing a musical that's going into production. And the initial run out is going to be over at Hope University sometime after the holidays. So might be another person of interest to have on the show at some point. But yeah, once he has this run through with the university kids, he's working with a musical director, and I think they're going to take that next step forward and, you know, get some of the professionals involved going forward. But just a fascinating guy. Met him in 2007, and he's been over to Nashville a few times before I left. And like I said, he's always been kind enough to give me a place to lay my head when I go over there. He lives over near St. Michael's.
Oh yeah.
Always get to look at from flat window at the clock tower that always seems to be off.
Well, I used to lecture for Hope, by the way. I used to lecture for them when they opened up in Shore Street. That's how I got to know about the likes of Al Jolson and Ernest Borgnine. You know, that's how I got to know about them. It's surprising, you know, what history is. And that's just what I mean. You know, when we do this particular show about how America feels today, how we view America, because as you said, John, before, you know, about, you know, you could be living in a third world, you know, how it's gone. And it's, you know, you spoke about LA, you know, Santa Monica. Now, when I was growing up, or, you know, not even growing up, just a few years ago, you know, Santa Monica, someone lives there. Wow, you know, fancy living there. This is fantastic. And what you're saying about today and the way, this is just my opinion, but it's not, we're talking about it now. I want to talk about it, and I'll give time for Dennis to digest what I'm saying, is the neglection of certain governments, certain, like, POTUS, shall I say, in America, just neglecting the people themselves, the citizens, which I think is a disgrace, because they were the leaders of the world.
Yeah.
And did you get me past tense? They were.
Yeah.
And it's you know, so this is what I wanted to be. It'll be light as well. Don't get me wrong there, Dennis. It'll be light as well, but it'll be heavy. It'll be one of those, like, you know, balancing it out.
Sure.
With the good things in America, and also the neglect of ordinary American citizens.
Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. I'm all in.
Is that all right with you? Is that all right with you, John?
Defo.
Is that all right with you, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gentlemen, I think it's been fascinating. I've got to leave my daughter, so I have to end it. Honestly, it's been brilliant tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Frank. I appreciate it. I'm glad I was able to introduce you to John as well.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. A big thank you, because Dennis, I think your iPhone is better than your laptop because you're so clear. I'm not breaking it or anything.
It'll be red hot by now, won't it? Like, oh.
Yeah, to plug it back up though. The battery was getting a little drained, but yeah, I gotta fill my battery with some liquid yumminess.
John, it's been an absolute pleasure. It really
Thanks, Frank.
is.
Thanks so much for having me on.
No, I'm made up. I'm delighted that this fella, Dennis, all the way, thousands of miles away, introduced me to you.
And I'm only in West Derby. What's that all about?
What I mean is, do you see how technology works?
That's how it goes. Yeah. It used to take 12 days for news to get across the Atlantic. There you go.
And we could talk about those UFOs over New Jersey as well. That's another thing. I'll just go on a few here. The Anfield Frankie, are you going to tell the fellas about your new group, the Bad News? Bad News. Every one of us. And he carries on by saying, and your Christmas song, All I Want for Christmas is Not to Get Up in the Night. Yes. Yeah, how did you know about that? 4 times a night. It's been frustrating. And he says, a great show, so interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, mate.
Even the Ottoman Turk says, thanks again for the great show. People much appreciated. Isn't that lovely?
Well, so, next time I'm over, guys, you can usually find me either in the lodge on Lark Lane or at the Phil for a pint. Or you to get in there too.
And next week we've got it's a Christmas show really. Derek Shelmerdin's Rock and Roll Unraveled, where we will be playing a few Christmas songs, talking about these Christmas songs, the likes of Xmas, The War Is Over. When you look at that title, John, and when you look at the title, especially Dennis, because he loves the Beatles, Xmas, War Is Over, if you want it. I was on some stream, and it didn't half upset me. And one of the comments that come through, because I follow the alternative, to be honest, not this Western nonsense. And it said John Lennon was a coward. I couldn't believe. Because I put it wasn't to me, lots of people were putting up, about these great activists, especially against war. Mm-hmm. People were putting up, these Americans, by the way, saying, the greatest activist was a gentleman from England, Liverpool, England, who preached peace instead of war, and that was John Lennon. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, as I said, there was loads of comments, and I commented, and down at this fellow with that, John Lennon was a coward. What do you think of that statement, John? What did you think of that statement?
I've got to be honest. It's part and parcel of the internet, that, and actually, if you're doing well, if you're running a podcast or a stream, something like that, if you get a few cranks, because unfortunately it means that you get loads of people, but you get some people it's going to attract, and they just want to say things like that just to get a rise. Yeah. And that's it. They love there's sort of a little thing some people have. They love a bit of negative attention, but when you think about it, I bet you the vast majority of people on that stream, you know, lovely, and they were saying great things. But one person says something like that, but it draws the attention towards them. Kind of get a kick out of it.
It's like
it was a girl. Sorry, Anthony.
Whatever we do in life, whether you're a singer, songwriter, whether you're an artist, whether you're a journalist, whether you're an author, whatever we do is open for other people's opinion, and it's great when people like what we do and stuff. But you always remember, I always remember, the negative little snide comment that might be from 200 years ago, and you think that's the one that when you go dozing off and sleep, that's the one that keeps coming back.
Yeah,
it's
bullying in a way. I think it's wrong, but having said that, it brings the Scouser out of me, because when someone does that, I say, all right then, come on then.
I like to call them keyboard commandos. I mean,
I'll
behind the screen.
I'll give them a bit the old Oscar Wilde, like, you know, have a go back, but that's just me.
But he would have been the first one to admit he wasn't a perfect being, and he had a lot of foibles. And the saddest part was, just when he was kind of, he's getting back out there professionally, musically.
Oh, yeah.
But he was also in the process of jump-starting his relationship with Julian.
Yeah.
I felt sorry for Julian in the whole thing, and I still do, because he didn't really have a relationship with his dad when he was a youngin, because of the whole Beatle thing.
I saw a really sweet thing. I don't know if anyone saw this on social media. Dennis, you might have seen this. Yeah, it was a picture Julian posted, and it was on Twitter and Instagram, of him and his brother in the Dakota.
Yeah.
So him and Sean in the Dakota, and they did a couple of pictures. One of them, Julian's giving him a big kiss on the cheek. He's giving him a big smacker on the cheek, just saying how much he loves him. And it's December, so obviously that's it. A certain thing's going to be in their minds, and they're in the Dakota. Apparently, Yoko still lives there, in that same apartment. And I just thought that's so sweet. It's such a lovely thing, that there's obviously a lot of healing going on there, and that they've got that kind of relationship, those brothers.
Yeah.
Well, I asked both Anthony and John about that comment, John being a coward, and I want to ask Dennis, would you have disagreed with that particular comment?
I would have given him the what for. Probably would have been all over him like a wetsuit.
Yeah, this lady, I don't know who she was, an American girl. She really bastard this fella, saying such a thing.
Like a real life thing of what John was saying before about the use of AI, which is falseness, which is a device to create or stimulate reality, which is great, using it in different elements and stuff. And I think in all walks of life it'll be used, but it's not a replacement for life.
No.
As Lennon's wit and sparky outbursts, his intellect is not AI. He would just say what was in the heart and what was in the soul and say it. And here we are, like nearly 50 years after he's gone, and we're still remembering the profound things he said.
Yeah.
And he didn't create them with some sort of gizmo, He's just speaking as he's speaking, which is the great, true Liverpool way of facing the world, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. So listen, boys, I've got to end the show. I really have.
Go see that girl of yours.
Yes, I've got to. I said a phone. Anyway, it's been great. I just want to thank. I've got the Liverpool podcast tomorrow, LFC. That starts at 8. It'll be a pre-match, which we're playing on Wednesday. Who we'd like, who we'd like to see play in that team, give some minutes to young kids or whatever, because we've got to rest our players for the weekend against Spurs. So, we'll be talking all about that. We'll be talking about the Fulham game as well. So that's tomorrow night. I've just got to thank my wonderful guests and Gap Painting Services for sponsoring the Frank Carlyle Show, because without them, we'd be struggling, I'm being honest. They do. They're great people, get them in. They are, they're fantastic. They're in and out.
Florida, I got a job for you.
They're fully time served. They're fully insured. They're in and out, as I said, the first class. And if you need a room to, before Christmas, don't be disappointed. Get these in, and they'll have it done like that. I've got to thank my wonderful guest, my oppo there, Anthony Brown, lovely Anthony. I've got to thank.
Thank you.
That fella.
Tonight to meet the lads as well.
Yeah.
Right,
Thank you, Dennis.
And the wonderful fellow, the alligator man, Dennis.
The alligator whisperer.
Yeah.
It's behind you, Dennis. Behind you. He's laughing.
Do you know what? I'm sitting here freezing, and he's got a fan on the ceiling going around for people.
Stay to it.
I'm like this. Freezing. And obviously, John Maxwell, the author, and his books look absolutely wonderful, people. And there they are. If you want a little reminder, Water Street. Where have I gone? Oh, there we are. Water Street is the first one, and also the Americans of Abercrombie Square. Abercrombie Square is absolutely wonderful. I love that place. It's the old university, by the way, and the ceiling is absolutely astonishing. It really is. With J.K. Prolu and his wife sitting around like it's a lady's parasol, but done as a tablecloth. And you see these wonderful things and images of Bacchus, the great wine gods, Greek. So they weren't like idiots, as I'm sorry, but the northern people thought. They was more intellectual, as I said. Well, that's the story I gave anyway. And it's wonderful, to see these wonderful books, and I'm definitely going to get them. I'm definitely getting them, to be honest. And it's just for me to say to my guests, thank you so much for coming on. See you in a couple of weeks as well. Talking about America and this country, what's going on in the world, the new inauguration of a new American president, President Trump, and the outgoing President Biden, and also what's going on in America today, unfortunately. And that's me and Jason Pennington. Without Jason Pennington, there'd be no Frank Carlyle Show, because I'm hopeless with IT.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, lads, and the chat, obviously, because without the chat,
great comments as always.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you said that, Dennis. I'm very made up you said that, because there have been some great comments there. Thank you so much, boys. I'll see you soon. See you the arm.
Have a good night, guys. Take care.
Well, see you next time.
All the best, gents. See you now.
Ciao.